Good morning to you. Can you take us back in time this morning to April of 2022? What happened that day on that Brooklyn subway?
Yes, so Frank James was the Brooklyn subway shooter. He actually was riding the N train in Brooklyn, and what he did was he was dressed up as an MTA maintenance worker, and he let off a smoke bomb, a number of smoke bombs in the subway car as the train was between stations. So this caused people to go to one end of the car, and he ended up shooting 32 rounds at all of these subway riders in this car. And he shot 10 people. Thankfully, none of them died, but he had a Glock 17 semi-automatic, shot 32 rounds off. And after that, he just disappeared into the crowd and into the chaos of that day. And he disappeared into New York City. And the police had to go on a 30-hour manhunt before they found him. And he actually ended up calling the police and telling on himself, which is how they ended up finding him.
Mina, this isn't something that you normally hear every day. To hear this man did this, many people were like, okay, what's going on with his mentals? Was there a mental health emergency involved?
Right. So that is actually what his defense attorney argued, is that he had mental health issues. He's been dealing with schizophrenia his entire life, alcoholism, and he's endured decades of discrimination and degradation, both real and perceived, which kind of drove him to this abject apathy. He no longer appreciated life or death, his own or others. And the defense in this case actually sought 18 years based on the fact that he had these mental health issues that were ongoing throughout his entire life and a troubled childhood. But the prosecutors did not buy it, and apparently neither did the judge in this case.
So he did plead guilty and now has life in prison. Let's talk about what that life in prison verdict means.
Sure. So the government in this case sought 10 life sentences to be served concurrently, plus 10 years for discharging a firearm during this crime of violence. Their argument basically was that he had planned this over the course of years. He didn't snap. This wasn't a mental break. He had planned this attack meticulously over months and years. And there were social media postings that Frank James had put up talking about how he was going to do something violent and terrible. And he terrified all of New York City with this attack. I mean, he upended this morning commute. People were terrified for 30 hours before he was finally caught. And there was a treasure trove of evidence that was found connecting him to this attack. So the prosecutors also found in a Philadelphia storage unit that he had other means to carry out more attacks, because they found ammunition and gun-related items in that Philadelphia storage unit. So the argument basically was, this wasn't a mental break. He had planned this. He's an evil person, not that he's very, very ill. And the judge actually gave the sentence that the government asked for, which is the 10 life sentences concurrently, plus the 10 years for the gun charge.
And Mina, you raised a great point this morning. So many times, a lot of people don't get life in prison unless they actually murder someone. But you just raised a great point. He could have potentially done this again. So do you think that played a role in him not being able to get out until he dies, apparently?
Right. I think that in this particular case, looking at the facts, the gravity of the situation, the violence that he committed on this morning commute, the fact that he shot 10 people, and he was aiming for critical mass, right? He was aiming for people to die, even though nobody did die. I think that the judge took all of that into consideration. And if you look at the video of this chaos, the chaotic morning that was going on that day, you can see that people were very hurt. There were 3 people who testified at the sentencing hearing yesterday who had to relive this nightmare. And it was a very, very emotional time. So taking all of that into consideration, the violence of this crime, the gravity of the situation, the impact that Frank James had on his victims, that all came into play in terms of sentencing.
All right, Mina Malik, attorney and partner at the Cochran firm. Thank you so much for joining me here on Live Now from Fox. Is there anything else you'd like to add about this case?
I think you raise a great point, Jeanne. You know, less than 3% of federal crimes end up with a life sentence. Usually it's reserved for murders, it's reserved for drug trafficking, and really, really heinous crimes. But less than 3% of federal criminal defendants end up with life sentences. So this is very telling that we had 10 people survive here. and still the judge imposed 10 life sentences on Frank James.
All right, Mina Malik, thank you so much for waking up with us here on Live Now for Fox. I'm sure this won't be the last time that we speak. I hope you have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you so much.